Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Annie News, some more cut content from Eminence in the Shadow, which is still just being absolutely awesome. Funniest bit, well, I was in hysterics, I couldn't stop laughing, was when Sid's talking to Rose, trying to be all emotional, and they're like, no, the wedding, you can't go through with it, blah, 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 but then just keeps eating the biscuits, and then trying to talk. Absolutely hilarious. But anyway, let's see what was left out of all this, like, Rose stuff and like the betrayal and everything, the marriage and whatnot. And was it 559? The one with the purple hair that was also given powers by Shadow. Let's get to it.
We all know misunderstandings lie at the forefront of Eminence and Shadow,
Oh
but
yeah,
the one between Rose and Sid just keeps on giving at this point. Neither are even remotely close to being on the same page, yet somehow every encounter just strengthens their bond further.
it's just so clever. Neither of them have either clue, but they keep intertwining with each other. It's just genius.
It's this hilarious.
It's like the way he was even like, but why did she kill her dad? And I was like, oh yeah, he doesn't even know why she actually did that. He just, oh my god, yeah.
Dynamic that surprisingly makes Rose one of the most developed characters in the entire series. There wasn't much cut content with regards to him and her, but when it came to her mission and the subsequent fight with Victoria, quite a bit was left out from the actual conflict. It was a good bit of action between Victoria and the cult, then even some surprising moves from Sid a bit after.
Cool.
So, if you want to see what it is the anime left out from this in the novels, then stick around as I go through all of it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Episodes 29 and 30.
So we're just covering both. Cool, because we didn't have a cut content when the filler episode was out. So this is covering episodes 9 and 10 of season 2, isn't it? Let me just quickly check here. The Key and Caged Bird. Yes, so episode 9 and 10. Awesome.
The Key and the Caged Bird.
Ah, okay, there we go.
Covering chapters 1 to 2 of Volume 4 of the light novel.
Cool.
The episode does start off with Rose having her nightmare, but it's neither in the cafe that Marie owns, nor is it at the same location that Shadow is at. Where Rose awakens from this nightmare is a secret Shadow Garden base deep within the Oriana Kingdom.
I love this whole thing. It's like this secret, massive organization. Just Sid has no idea.
So, as funny as it was to see Sid nonchalantly chilling next to 664 and 665, unfortunately neither him nor Marie were present here. What we miss out from the anime doing this is a series of products exclusive to Mitsugoshi that are seen to adorn this hidden Shadow Garden base. First is a secret material used as the foundations for the walls and ceilings, otherwise known to us as reinforced concrete.
Okay.
Next is a transparent crystal glass that serves as an enclosure for the light that radiates within it, and it's multiple of these that are mounted into Mitsugoshi's high-end chandeliers. A highly luxurious light fixture in which the cheapest model is 10 million zeni.
Oh my, they making the money.
Both of these are products of Mitsugoshi's engineering and construction, and it's been rumored for some time that they do plan on applying these techniques to the construction industry. So that's yet another market that I assume Mitsugoshi are hoping to create a monopoly in.
Groovy.
Now, it's as Rose walks through this hallway filled with all sorts of impressive engineering that she contemplates the fact that all of it came from Shadow. She couldn't understand how one so skilled could also be so intelligent too, but the fact remained that both his power and genius appeared limitless. It was a feat she could only wonder as to how it possibly came to be like that. Rose would then meet up with 664 and 665, and it was here that we got a bit of context behind what their numerical titles meant. Their numbers solely represented the order in which they joined Shadow Garden, but when it came to actual power, it wasn't wrong to consider each set of 100 stronger than the next set of 100.
Yeah, because didn't you explain this? And then you've got the 7, but then there does seem to be a hierarchy, and then 559 or Victoria. Is it 559? I can't remember the number, but Victoria, anyway, just said, is the only one that's able to fight and go up the numbers.
100. So, even if their numbers aren't necessarily their rankings in terms of power, you could probably get away using it as a measure for that anyway. So long as you took into account the exceptions, the regimented structure of Shadow Garden was actually quite easy to follow. Rose had once been witness to one such exceptions, and it was Victoria's fight against number 89 that made her feel like she too could get strong enough to start changing things.
Right.
She felt that if she became strong like her, then perhaps she could one day save the Oriana Kingdom. When past encounters made it clear that she couldn't change anything though, all that showed was that she needed to work harder. Effort she was intent on showcasing in this next mission. For a bit of context on what's been going on in the Oriana Kingdom, It turns out that there's been a fierce conflict between the Perv faction and the anti-Perv faction.
The Perv faction.
All-out war hasn't yet been started, but in small regions at the outskirts of the capital, minor skirmishes have been happening on the daily. This fort was one of such skirmishes, and when the cult had deployed their most elite force to secure it, that was a red flag which made it clear that something was important here. The fort was nothing more than a vacation home the royal family once used to escape the summer heat, but it was before that they were these historical ruins. A shrine whose purpose was to memorialize all those lost in the battle against Diablos. Now the ruins were filled with corpses, and it was their limp bodies that served as a stark reminder that all this was Rose's fault.
Oh,
it was her actions which started this war, and it was her people that were suffering because of it. What made everything even worse was the fact that she was powerless to do anything to stop it. Her soldiers were dying and her people suffering, yet here she was a Shadow Garden foot soldier, surrounded by people both stronger and more intelligent. So, if there was any one thing that Shadow Garden had taught her, it was just how small and weak she truly was. It was as Rose snuck her way closer to the ruins that she could just barely make out a few of the words that Koadoi was saying. They weren't anything too revealing, but they do potentially hint towards what this ring could be.
Alright, okay, so it's like, there's no mistaking it. There's not mistaking it. I reckon that's meant to be no mistaking it. This is a door to the altar. We're left to Queen Rhaena. Sure enough, this is Oriana Kingdoms.
Rose had wanted to know more about it herself, but the reason she couldn't was because those with a rank like hers weren't allowed to. If there was anything Shadow Garden wanted to keep secure, it was the amount of information that was spread between its members. So, for Rose and the others to be so low down on the totem pole, it was only natural the information they received was on a need-to-know basis.
Makes sense, yeah.
Now, one of the biggest changes to this episode was the way 559 initiated the fight, as well as the way it continued up to the point that Rose was taken away from it. If you were just as confused as I was, you'll be happy to know things made a bit more sense in the novels.
Right, okay, cool.
So, first, 559 didn't initiate by going for Rose's mother, but
I thought that was very strange. She went straight there.
instead engaged with a massive strike intended to wipe out everyone.
That makes so much more sense.
Just like how Beta once did in Sanctuary,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
blade 559
Beta's
created
classic.
had bisected both swords and people alike. Unless you had dodged or were out of range, there was absolutely nothing you could do to block this. 559 didn't just stop with that though, because by the time the cult had realized what was happening, she was already onto her next move and methodically killing all the cult members remaining.
Makes sense. Cool.
A grand total of 9 were slain before they were finally able to organize themselves. Considering that these were the most elite members of the cult, it was actually quite impressive how she was able to fell so many.
Didn't the guy say that she fought them for like 3 days?
It was when she switched her focus to Rose's mother, though, that's when Rose would jump in and stop her.
That makes sense.
The vision of her dad had flashed inside her mind, and before she knew it, she was already blocking 559's attack here. Where the anime makes an interesting change is the lack of movement by the cult to show that they were taking Rose hostage now. You see, by Rose jumping behind enemy lines to save her mother, the cult was now in position to take advantage of that. They had raised their swords to both Rose and the Queen, then threatened to kill them if 559 didn't stop.
Okay, this is very different. Right, okay, this is a more sensical approach.
As you would expect from 559 though, she honestly didn't care what they did to them. It was a response that left Koadoi fairly shocked, but not entirely, since this is behavior he would have expected from any of the 7 shadows. 559 would then reveal that she wasn't one of them, but that just made Koadoi think that she was a named number. When 559 revealed that she wasn't one of them either, Koadoi's eyes went wide with shock to the revelation that a number like hers possessed so much power.
And I'm hoping something else is going to come along the lines, because she was given her powers by Shadow. Rose's power were given by Shadow, and no one else's except for the original 7 were. I'm hoping something interesting is going to happen with Rose and
He could only accept that this was the monster he was dealing with and do what he could to eliminate her just like all the others. Since neither Rose nor the Queen could be used as leverage anymore though, both were bound and then taken away from the fight. A feat that was only possible since 559 was occupied by the other cultists. They weren't just regular foot soldiers though, because in addition to mostly everyone being the highly skilled first children, 3 of them were also bona fide cult leaders. They were the highest ranking members that made even 664 and 665 quiver. It was after this that we finally get to Sid, and it's here that we find out Koadoi is actually the lord of the region now. Marie was recounting all the trials she's currently facing, while Sid occasionally nodded his head as if to show he was paying attention to her. The three goons would then walk in shortly after, and Sid would put on his side character act to get them to leave. Where the anime makes yet another major change is the inevitable confrontation in which Sid gets back at them.
Right, yeah.
You see, in the anime, all we got was this comical instant death type ending for them, but in the novels, Sid goes full-on AINZ on them.
Okay.
He first greets them in an alley to show that it's him, then
Oh, cool.
instantly disappears the moment they try to attack him. He would then reappear again behind them, except now he's aware that they like to fight by the rules of the lawless city, something he was very much appreciative for. So, another grunt would try a different attack, but once again, Sid would just vanish. It's when he reappears this time, though, that in his hand would be the heart of the person who just attacked him.
Oh my god, that's brutal. That's... oh my... wow.
Just like how
Wow,
Kuro
yeah,
once
I instantly thought of Hunter x Hunter,
did in
yeah.
Hunter x Hunter, Sid had ripped out his opponent's heart before anyone could even notice he did. This was obviously enough to make anyone scared, so right as the second grunt started to flee, Sid would dash towards him and grasp his heart too.
Oh, Jesus.
Thrusting his hand straight through his chest, then crushing his heart as if it was nothing. The final grunt could do nothing but plea now, but Sid was committed to finishing this the same way he started, grasping a third heart before heading off in search of a treasure-filled fortress. So, I'm not sure why the anime went with the direction that they did instead, but
Probably didn't want it to be too, like, brutal. You know what I mean? Trying to, like, tone down the violence, maybe?
I think seeing Sid do his own perfected version of Grasp Heart would have been amazing.
That's cool.
Granted, the scene from the anime was pretty funny too.
It was
but I'm
cool
sure
the
we
way
all
they
would have
did that.
enjoyed
He just turns around and is like, wait a minute, they're dead? What's going on?
this one more. Now, where the anime brings us next is the near conclusion of the 3-day fight with 559. There were over 100 corpses that now surrounded her. 3 of them belonged to the cult leaders who'd previously revealed themselves, and the rest were the first children and reinforcements sent afterwards. It was a non-stop fight that left her all bloodied and bruised now. Her back had been sliced to ribbons, her gut cut open, and her left arm completely gone now. It was a genuine feat to see her even capable of standing anymore.
Crazy.
664 and 665, who'd been through much of the same, were now passed out from exhaustion and lack of mana. So, it was only 559 and Koadoi the Gale now. Koadoi would flaunt his victory just like how we saw in the anime.
A little bit more here, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Then the healing which would make 559 good as new would present her with the opportunity to strike him back. Unlike the attack which would disintegrate him, though, she would instead cut his foot off and do nothing more, leading Koadoi to flee despite only having 1 foot to run on.
That's weird, so he... oh, wait, okay, well, let's see.
As you would expect from a person whose title is Gale, his movements were so quick that you couldn't even see him anymore.
Oh, so he gets away.
Sure, he only had 1 good foot left, but even with that, the only thing perceptible about him was a gust of wind. He was able to run fast, but unfortunately it was straight towards Shadow. The moment he had entered into his range, Koadoi was minced into pieces before he could even realize what it was that hit him.
Right, that makes sense. I was about to say, like, so if he survived in the manga... well, but cool. He died anyway. Alright, okay.
Bringing an end to the long 3-day fight that 559 had started. Now, if you're wondering how it is Sid had even stumbled upon them, well, it was while checking out the ruins in search of treasure that he could sense people using magic in the forest behind him.
Fair enough.
The girl who he had spotted exuding it was a person he recognized as Victoria, a possessed girl he had saved almost a year ago. Back then, he was just on a stroll across the country, but it was after spotting her and curing her of the possession that he would bring her back and leave her with Alpha. Before, she was just a timid girl who wouldn't even hurt a fly, but now she was this fierce warrior fighting tooth and nail to survive. In fact, it was the clear picture of her struggling to do just that that led Sid to heal her and take care of the old guy bullying her. What makes this situation a whole lot more funny is the circumstances under which Sid assumed all this was happening. You see, when Victoria explained how it was she ended up here, Sid just assumed that she was making up excuses. The whole thing with the cult definitely made sense, but since the cult to him was nothing more than fiction, he was surprised that she was able to make up such a coherent story so quickly.
Yeah, it's mad that he doesn't understand that all this stuff is happening around him. I love it.
To him,
great.
he just assumed that she was doing something illegal. The soldiers then spotted her doing whatever it was she wasn't allowed to, then a fight broke out and led them here. This was the truth that Sid believed was happening. Obviously that wasn't the case, but to think Sid acted the way he did while assuming Victoria was fighting random soldiers is pretty funny and kinda terrifying. Now, the rest of the episode was pretty much the same, so we can go ahead and skip to the beginning of the next, starting with Sid's approach towards the royal castle. The anime mentioned he was going to teleport in, but what he actually meant was that he was going to use one of his advanced movement techniques, a special ability that lets him move at the speed of sound. I know that's pretty much the same as teleportation, but for someone like Sid whose power we know he trains to acquire, super speed makes a bit more sense than instant displacement. At least that's something we know he's actively trained to master. It's after Sid does make it into the castle that the anime for no reason decided to do Epsilon even more dirty. You see, unlike how here the percentage Sid gave was 99, in the novels the actual number was 90%.
Oh.
I know that's not really an important
I mean, it's not huge, but still, like,
detail in the slightest, but I felt it necessary since there might actually be a few Epsilon stands out there. The next part only makes it worse for her, though, since in addition to padding her chest with 90% slime, she also pads her hips and tightens her waist too.
Oh.
Sometimes even going so far as to lengthen her legs. It's no small feat to pull off any of those things, so to do them all at once and maintain it every day, well, that's the core reason why she's known for having the most refined sense of magic control out of everyone.
Oh, alright.
As for Epsilon's
That's
identity
cool.
now, her reputation as Chiron has made her known as the greatest pianist in the world.
Oh.
She wasn't known until only a few years ago, but it's after people started hearing her music that she quickly became the talk of concert halls everywhere.
Class.
No one could get enough of the way she innovated music with her polished technical skill.
Taught by Sid.
So, if Natsume was the rising star for literature, then Chiron was the new up-and-coming celebrity in music.
Music, wow.
They were this powerful duo who were revolutionizing the world of art right now. That being the case, it was only natural the word of Chiron taking an apprentice quickly caused disdain for those who were around to hear it. Most, if not all, nobles were speaking of how Sid wasn't worthy to be by her side. It wasn't until Sid cleared that tension with immaculate artistry of his own that the room would go silent and pay attention to him now.
I'm so glad that they actually made him out to be a really good, like, pianist as well. Like, I thought he was gonna, like, just flunk it and blah, but nah, it was great. And Moonlight Sonata is an absolute banger of a classical tune, so, like, yeah, love it. I wish it went on for a little bit longer as well, like, but...
Obviously, this was the only song that Sid knew, but to see so much interest from those so wealthy was quite the intriguing perspective.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is it the only song he knows on the piano? I've missed that, if that's already been explained. Well, that's... Oh, okay.
When later hearing how much money he could make. The only issue was that he'd have to learn different songs. As for the reason he chose this one, well, aside from being the only one that he knew, this was the least notable, least respected out of all of Chiron's pieces. It was the best option to maintain his identity as a side character. The rest of the scene carried out pretty much the same, so if we go ahead and skip to the garden now...
I thought it was clever as well that, like, we've already seen the John Smith character use all the wires and everything. So to see the wire grab the ring out of Perv's pocket made complete sense. I thought that was quite clever.
There was an interesting translation that made the context of Sid's thoughts a little bit different. He never said how Margaret was trying to convert him to her religion, but instead recognized her tactics as the classic one a conman would use. As a fellow conman himself, he knew giving up a secret was a classic move many used to gain someone's trust fast. If you ever wanted someone to think you were their friend, it was best to feign vulnerability just like how Margaret did, then reveal something valuable as if to show that you yourself trust them. This was the behavior Sid was avoiding here. The next part with Kevin actually had him and Margaret make conversation, but aside from her directly stating that she hated his guts, there wasn't much else to point out here. If anything, her stating she despises him just makes his ignorance that much more comedic. The reason the only thing Sid did was apologize was because when it comes to dealing with people like this, the best strategy was to just ignore them and apologize over and over again.
The way he was just completely like, sorry what? Sorry what? Sorry what?
Yeah. In the end, they would always storm off thinking that they'd achieved something. It's when we get to the next scene with Rose that yet again we're confronted by the core essence of Eminence and Shadow.
Hell yes.
Misunderstandings that eventually lead to something bigger.
Love it.
The first comes from Rose and how she perceived Sid's arrival, because for a peasant like him to make it all the way to her, Well, that was an accomplishment which would have required a miracle.
Big deal. Love that.
Not
yeah.
only did he just have to infiltrate a castle, but to cross international borders and even become the apprentice of Chiron. Those were things that should have been impossible to him. So much so that Rose couldn't even begin to fathom the amount of work necessary to even get noticed by Chiron. To then do all that just for her? Well, that was enough to make her heart beat straight out of her chest. It was an undeniable sign that she could only perceive as true love. Now, the cookies Sid was eating weren't actually here, but it was very on brand to include them.
So funny. So it didn't happen. It's such a great addition, and it was so funny. It's the way that, like, there's a part where he's talking with it still in his mouth as well. I just loved it. It's making me laugh now just thinking about it. It's just so funny.
Reason being that to allow Eminence and Shadow to get too serious is to make Sid seem like he actually cares about all this.
True.
We don't want to misplace Sid's concern towards Rose or her mother, so what better way to show he's only in it for himself than to have him stuffing his face all while Rose cries her heart out.
So funny.
We then get to a misunderstanding about both their dreams, which for Rose is the one where she thinks that they could be married, then for Sid it's all about being the Eminence in
Shadow.
Neither are on the same page when talking about it, but somehow their back and forths all seem to relate to it.
It seems to match
it's
up.
that recurring dynamic that just keeps going and going. It's when Perv walks in after that it turns out Sid was in the room with them. He was somehow hidden right there in plain sight, sipping tea and eating cookies all while this encounter was happening. Both were extremely delicious, so to Sid it now made sense where all the Oriana Kingdom's tax money was going. He also felt that by partaking in these luxuries himself, he was therefore depriving the nobles of having it, which in turn avenged the common folk for their misspent taxes. It was certainly quite the bit of mental gymnastics, but the end result did actually get Kevin suspended. He was relieved of duties for stealing food.
Oh no.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for what we missed from the past 2 episodes.
Cool.
I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and if you want to come talk about Eminence and Shadow more, then feel free to join me at twitch.tv/anynews_. I stream every Sunday at around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do.
So until next time. Ciao! Cool, man. Oh, brilliant. Some interesting stuff left out there. Glad he covered the 2 episodes, that's boss. And yeah, Sid eating those cookies was just hilarious. I loved that. I loved that loads. Yeah, surely there's only like 2 more episodes left of this. I think there can't be much left of the season. This anime season must nearly be over. Maybe like 3 weeks, something like that. But yeah, anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask for. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.